about you and me.
When Europeans first came to the New World, they saw a vast continent with unlimited resources. But by the late 1800s, the settlers had claimed most of those resources. 200 years later, the battle for America's treasures is still being waged. Only now it's the corporations claiming ownership of what once belonged to the public trust, with the help of California Congressman Richard Pombo, perhaps the most environmentally dangerous politician in office today. In 2003, Tom DeLay made Richard Pombo chair of the House Resources Committee. From this position of power, Richard Pombo controls nearly all environmental lawmaking in Congress.
He believes that the solution to this country's ills is to take all of the public lands and turn them into private development.
Former Congressman Pete McCloskey recently came out of retirement to challenge Pombo in the Republican primary, citing Pombo's environmental record as one of the reasons.
I've differed strongly with the Bush administration. It's cut back all of the money for the parks and the forests. They want to put snowmobiles in Yosemite, and what they want to do is roll back the environmental progress of 30 years, and it's just wrong. And Pombo is their chief operative in doing that, so I'd like to take him out of the Congress.
To name a few of those rollbacks, Pombo opposes measures to address global warming. He supports logging of old growth in roadless areas and proposed selling off 350 million acres of public land, including 15 national parks. He tried to weaken laws on pesticide use, supports opening all federal lands to drilling and extractive industries, including a recent push to drill off the California and Florida coasts, and he backs whale hunting. Tiernan Sittenfeld is the legislative director of the League of Conservation Voters, an organization working to create a pro-environment Congress. With his anti-environmental record, Pombo is one of their top targets to unseat.
In the fall of 2005, Congressman Pombo rushed a bill to gut the Endangered Species Act, which is a cornerstone environmental law and has been critically important in protecting species in the entirety of its existence over the last 30 years. A couple of the most egregious provisions in his bill, which is deceptively titled the Threatened and Endangered Species Act, would basically require the federal government to use taxpayer dollars to pay companies just to comply with the law. It would also do away with the current critical habitat system, even though habitat loss is a primary cause of species endangerment and extinction.
Well, if it passes in the form that Mr. Pombo got it through his committee in 8 days in the House, it would gut the bill, and it would gut the whole scheme of protection of environmental endangered species.
As co-author of the original Endangered Species Act, McCloskey, along with many environmentalists, has agreed that it needs revisions. However, he remains clear that Pombo's proposal will not improve the issues that need attention.
It's been hard to get through the bureaucracy, but what Pombo wants to do is make it even more tough to get through the bureaucracy. You could use the entire budget of the Fish and Wildlife Service just to pay off developers. He's put a provision in there that a developer that wants to develop land should be given his future loss of profit for a project to develop that land. Well, you bankrupt the agency with that, and I think that's his purpose. It's not just to amend the problems of the act, it's to abolish it or to make it ineffective.
It's not just that Congressman Pombo is an anti-environmental lawmaker. He also has had all kinds of ethical lapses. Congressman Pombo has received huge contributions over the years from many of his favorite special interest industries. For example, the developers, the mining companies, the timber companies, the oil and gas companies, the electric utilities, the list goes on. So we're not surprised when we then see him turn around and try to gut our core environmental laws that those special interests are trying to do away with. And the League of Conservation Voters released a report in the fall of 2005, Rep. Richard Pombo's Family and Friends Network, that details the contributions he's taken from corporate special interests and then also the ways that he is neglecting his district in favor of promoting special interests and the interests of his own family.
While Congressman Pombo has been a major player in promoting big business on a national level, his district remains fraught with problems. The Congressional Research Service just released a report that showed that Pombo's district has some of the highest poverty in the nation, and that people in his district get less federal assistance than in other parts of the country.
There is a healthcare crisis in this county. It is exaggerated by our degree of poverty, which parallels that of Appalachia, and may be greater.
Dennis Telpaine has worked as a doctor in San Joaquin County for the past 22 years and notes how the lack of assistance has affected health care for Pombo's constituents.
We have a large immigrant population which is underserved in terms of access to health care. At least 30% of the population probably is uninsured. As a result of being uninsured, these people only seek medical care late in the course of problems, which I think may actually reflect on the issue regarding infant mortality in this county, which I believe to be 8 per thousand live births, which is much higher than the national average.
Infant mortality is one of the most important predictors of what a community looks like. It talks about access to health care, education for women, and we have some of the highest infant mortality rates in the country here in the San Joaquin County.
As a professor at the University of the Pacific in Stockton, Margie Ensign has worked and lived in the San Joaquin Valley, where she studies the issues it faces.
San Joaquin County, which again is one of the most vital parts of this country in terms of agricultural production, has federal expenditures per capita a third less than the national average. So when you put that picture together, some of the highest poverty rates, and we're getting among the lowest in terms of federal expenditures, it means the federal government hasn't spent much time and much attention here.
There's clearly less and less in terms of dollars spent. If the population is increasing at the rate that it has been, and you're administering the same number of healthcare dollars, clearly they're being distributed less over the proportion of patients who need that type of medical care.
I think the question basically is, are things getting worse for the immigrant that works here in the Valley because of the budget cuts and things like that, and particularly in this district, which would be Congressman Pombo's district. So it's very difficult to focus on a particular group of people, but the immigrants, I think, and the elderly and immigrant children are going to suffer from these budget cuts.
Sister Judy McDonnell of Catholic Charities works closely with immigrants in the San Joaquin Valley and has found very little support from Pombo in the face of decreased funding.
There are federal programs. We were the beneficiaries of a federal program that is specific to victims of domestic violence, sexual assault, stalking, date rape, and certain violent crimes. We had that grant for 2 years, and we didn't get funded for this year. So we've just applied again. We invited the congressman to come and meet with us. We never heard from Pombo's office, I have to say that. And it is a justice issue. Why do we want to cut out services when the money is there? Why do we want to put money back into the pockets of the wealthy so that they will donate it? I don't think they've been doing that. I don't think those wealthy people that get those tax cuts are donating it back to the community. If that were the case, that would be very helpful. It might solve the problems. But we have a terrible imbalance.